Roddy Piper died on July 31, 2015 at his home in Hollywood, California. He was only 61 years old. The cause of death was cardiac arrest brought on by a pulmonary embolism while he slept. His body was discovered in his home and the news sent shockwaves through the wrestling community and beyond. The man who had entertained millions was gone in an instant without warning, without fanfare. For someone who lived such a loud and chaotic life, the silence of his passing felt almost cruel. If you want to know how one of wrestling's most electric personalities went from ruling the ring to leaving us far too soon, then stick around because this story goes deeper than you think. And hey, if you're enjoying this content, hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on stories like this. Roddy Piper was born Roderick George Toombs on April 17, 1954 in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. His childhood was anything but stable. His father was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the family moved constantly. By the time Piper was a teenager, he had already been expelled from multiple schools. At 13 years old, he ran away from home and never really looked back. He played the bagpipes as a kid, which would later become part of his wrestling persona, but his early years were defined by struggle and survival. He lived on the streets and did whatever he had to do to get by. Boxing became an outlet for his anger and aggression, and he was good at it. By 15, he was sleeping in youth hostels and training in gyms, trying to find his place in the world. Wrestling found him before he found it. A local promoter saw potential in the scrappy kid with the mouth and the attitude. Piper started wrestling in small venues across Canada and quickly learned that if you couldn't wrestle like a technician, you had to make people care some other way. So he talked. He insulted. He provoked. He became the guy everyone wanted to see get beat up. That became his meal ticket. He wasn't the biggest or the strongest, but he understood psychology and how to manipulate a crowd better than almost anyone. By the time he was in his early 20s, Piper was working territories all over North America. He wrestled in Los Angeles, in Portland, in the Mid-Atlantic, and everywhere he went he left an impression. He feuded with locals, he brawled in arenas and parking lots, and he built a reputation as someone who could get heat like nobody else. In the early 80s, Piper's career took off when he arrived in the World Wrestling Federation. Vince McMahon saw what Piper brought to the table and gave him a platform. Piper's Pit became one of the most important segments in wrestling history. It was a talk show set where Piper would bring out guests and tear them apart verbally. It was unpredictable, raw, and it blurred the line between reality and performance. Piper didn't just play a character, he became one. The kilt, the leather jacket, the cocky smirk, it all became iconic. He feuded with Hulk Hogan, and that rivalry helped launch the first WrestleMania. Piper was the perfect villain for Hogan's superhero. He made people believe that anything could happen and that danger was always one word away. But wrestling took a toll on his body that most people didn't see. Piper worked through injuries that would have ended other careers. He wrestled with broken bones, torn muscles, and constant pain. There were no off seasons, no time to heal. You worked hurt or you didn't work at all. Piper chose to work. He later admitted that he had more than 30 surgeries over the course of his career. His hips, his knees, his back, everything was damaged. The physical abuse was relentless and it never really stopped. Even after he stepped away from full-time wrestling, the damage remained. His body had been used up and broken down in the name of entertaining crowds and making a living. Outside the ring, Piper struggled with demons that he kept mostly hidden. He dealt with depression and anger issues that stemmed from his rough childhood and the lifestyle he lived. Wrestling in that era meant late nights, constant travel, drinking, and drugs. Piper admitted in interviews later in life that he had used substances to cope with the pain, both physical and emotional. He didn't go into great detail, but he acknowledged that he had made mistakes and hurt people he cared about. His first marriage ended in part because of the chaos that surrounded his life. He was on the road more than he was home, and when he was home, he wasn't always present. The cost of fame and success in wrestling was steep, and Piper paid it. In the mid-90s, Piper transitioned into acting and other projects. He starred in the cult classic film They Live in 1988, which became one of his most beloved roles outside of wrestling. The movie wasn't a huge hit when it came out, but over time it gained a following. Piper's performance as a drifter who discovers that aliens are controlling humanity through subliminal messages was raw and physical. The fight scene in the alley became legendary and showcased Piper's toughness and commitment. He did other films and television appearances, but nothing ever matched the cultural impact of They Live. Still, it showed that Piper had range and could exist outside the wrestling bubble even if Hollywood never fully embraced him. Piper returned to wrestling multiple times over the years. He had runs in World Championship Wrestling in the late 90s and came back to WWE for special appearances and short feuds. Each return reminded fans why they loved him, but also showed how much his body had deteriorated. He moved slower, his face showed the years and the wear. But his mouth was still sharp. He could still cut a promo better than almost anyone. Even when his body betrayed him, his mind stayed sharp. He understood the business and he understood how to connect with people. That never left him. By the time the 2000s rolled around, Piper was dealing with serious health issues. In 2006, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was a cancer that attacks the lymphatic system, and it's serious. Piper underwent chemotherapy and radiation treatment. He fought through it and went into remission, but the treatments left him weaker. His body, which had already been through decades of punishment, now had to fight cancer. He talked about it publicly and tried to stay positive, but you could see the toll it took. He lost weight, his energy wasn't the same, and his appearance changed. But he survived. He beat cancer, and that was supposed to be his big victory. He was supposed to have more time. Piper's personal life stabilized as he got older. He remarried and had children, and by all accounts he tried to be a better father and husband than he had been in his younger years. He talked openly about wanting to make up for lost time and to be present for his family. He did conventions and appearances and stayed connected to the wrestling world, but he wasn't grinding himself into dust anymore. He seemed at peace, or at least more at peace than he had been. Friends said he was in good spirits in the months leading up to his death. He was working on projects, staying active and enjoying life. There were no obvious warning signs that the end was coming. On July 30, 2015, Piper went to bed like any other night. He was at his home in Hollywood and everything seemed normal. But sometime during the night his heart stopped. A pulmonary embolism, a blood clot that traveled to his lungs, caused cardiac arrest. He died in his sleep. His wife found him the next morning. There was no chance to say goodbye, no dramatic final scene. He was just gone. The news broke quickly and tributes poured in from wrestlers, celebrities, and fans around the world. Everyone had a Roddy Piper story. Everyone remembered something he said or did that made them laugh or made them angry or made them feel something. The wrestling community was devastated. Piper was one of the last connections to the golden era of wrestling, when characters were larger than life and the business still had an edge of danger and unpredictability. He was a bridge between the old school and the modern era. Wrestlers from every generation spoke about how much he influenced them. Stone Cold Steve Austin said Piper paved the way for guys like him. The Rock called him a legend and a trailblazer. Even people outside wrestling recognized his impact. He wasn't just a wrestler, he was a cultural figure who transcended the ring. The autopsy confirmed that Piper died from natural causes related to the embolism in his heart. But the years of damage to his body almost certainly played a role in his overall health decline. Decades of untreated injuries, painkiller use, the stress of the lifestyle, and the cancer all contributed to wearing him down. Piper's death was a reminder of what the wrestling business cost the people who built it. He gave everything to entertain, and in the end his body gave out. He was only 61. He should have had more years. He should have had time to watch his kids grow up, to enjoy retirement, to finally rest. But that's not what happened. Piper was cremated and his family held a private service. There was no big public funeral, no spectacle. His family wanted to grieve in peace, and that was respected. WWE honored him with tributes on their programming and eventually inducted him into the Hall of Fame posthumously with additional honors. His legacy was celebrated, but the sadness remained. The wrestling world had lost one of its most unique and irreplaceable voices. There would never be another Roddy Piper. The combination of his talent, his timing, his life story, and his personality was something that couldn't be replicated. In the years since his death, Piper's influence has only grown. New generations of fans discover his promos, his matches, and his interviews. They see what made him special. They understand why he mattered. His son has occasionally appeared in wrestling carrying on the family name, but nobody expects him to be his father. That's an impossible standard. Piper's work speaks for itself. The footage exists, the stories exist, and the impact he had on the industry is undeniable. He changed what it meant to be a heel. He showed that you didn't have to be a monster or a giant to be a top guy. You just had to make people care. Roddy Piper's life was a story of survival, reinvention, and relentless drive. He came from nothing, built himself into something, and paid a heavy price for it. He struggled with his demons, fought through pain and illness, and tried to leave something behind that mattered. He succeeded in that. His legacy is secure. But the cost was his health and ultimately his life. He died too young in a profession that chews people up and spits them out. His death was a reminder that the entertainment we consume comes from real people with real bodies that break down and real lives that end. Piper gave everything he had, and when there was nothing left to give, his heart stopped. That's what happened to Roddy Piper. He lived hard, he fought hard, and he left us too soon. If this story hit you the way it hit me, then make sure you subscribe, because we're going to keep bringing you the untold stories and the truth behind the legends.